What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of In the Box, and it's a solo episode today. It's just going to be me yapping for 35 to 45 minutes because Babiak is unfortunately battling with a stomach bug right now, and considering the fact that we got to talk about this Stanley Cup final, we couldn't wait. I didn't want to do something after game one. This is basically doubling as my Stanley Cup preview prediction video on top of a bunch of other different shit that we're going to talk about. We haven't done a podcast since the conference finals, but considering it's just me and I basically did a video talking about the conference finals, especially about what the fallout for Dallas and Carolina should be. Go watch that. Not going to really talk about the conference finals, but Cup finals, the Islanders extending Paul Murray as well as potentially Chris Lamoriello. Robertson and Rossi trade talk kind of coming out of nowhere, at least the Robertson part. Forrester and Cates' deals with the Philadelphia Flyers, Lane Lambert to the Seattle Kraken, the mass migration of CHLers to college hockey, which I predicted, as well as the Islanders and Sharks trade talks potentially for first overall. And then we're going to do a mailbag. So yeah, that sounds like a plan. I don't anticipate to be going for an insane amount of time. It's much like the Mike Bartner show back in the day that only lasted 14 episodes. That's what I started my YouTube with back in like September and October of 2023. If you've been here ever since then, you're a true day one. But yeah, mainly Cup final and then a bunch of other news topics. Also, as you can tell if you're watching this on YouTube, I am no longer in the previous studio. That studio only lasted like a month. It's been a lot of moving of late, but I finally moved out of my parents' place. I'm in Brooklyn. Did not expect to be moving out to Brooklyn. If you told me that 2 months ago, I would have said like Jersey City, Hoboken, Manhattan, or even like moving to Miami before Brooklyn, Islanders country with the Barclays Center. But yeah, it was finally time for me to move out of the parents' house. I'm 25 years old. Nothing wrong with living with your parents in your mid to even late 20s as long as you're working hard and and making some money, especially saving the amount of money that I saved by living at home was absolutely awesome. You're really dumb if you shame somebody for doing that. But yeah, it was time for me. Had a college friend that had a room open up, and it was a pretty cheap deal. Not the biggest room. If you see it on my Instagram, it's like what you expect if you don't live in the New York City area, like kind of a shoebox for the most part. But yeah, I'm excited to move out. It's going to be definitely a change of pace, and I think it's only really going to help the content in terms of me being truly locked in on the content. But let's talk about hockey. You guys want to hear about all the personal shit? And yeah, we have a Cup final. That's a rematch of last year's Cup final, and I think it's going to be it's potentially more hyped. It's like 70% of you guys like this one more than the previous one. I do think that the first one, just because neither of those teams have won a Cup final. But in terms of actual level of hockey, I think it's an upgrade. When looking at the Florida Panthers, they did lose Montour, they did lose Tarasenko, but pick up Seth Jones and Marchand, as well as some other solid depth pieces within that. Edmonton adding Arvidsson, Wallman, Klingberg, Skinner, Frederick. They did lose Fogle, Broberg, and Holloway, but those guys didn't have like huge pieces, especially the last two. So yeah, I think that this is going to be an awesome Cup final. We got to start it with Zach Hyman, though, of course, being out. Massive blow for the Edmonton Oilers, considering what he brings to the table, not only goal scoring wise, but like physicality. You look at him potentially against the Rats that the Florida Panthers had. He could be very effective at neutralizing that. And just the net front presence has been so good, especially last year in the playoffs, how much he was goal scoring. What he finished with like 17 goals. He was like a couple off the all-time record. That definitely stinks. And as a result, I think Florida does have the better forward core. But as I talked about on my TikTok, I don't think nearly enough people are talking about on the flip side of that. No Zach Hyman, but you have a fully healthy Leon Draisaitl. Last year, come the playoffs, come the Cup final in the Western Conference Finals, only had 4 points against the Dallas Stars in 6 games, and I think only 2 of those were goals, and then a goose egg in terms of goals against the Florida Panthers and 3 assists. It later came out that he was dealing with a rib as well as a wrist injury. Like, he was probably playing at 50%. At best. Like, he legitimately looked like a mediocre to bad at times second line center. And don't get me wrong, like Barkov, Bennett, they did a very good job defensively on him. But I think we agree that the room for improvement for Draisaitl in this series, I bet any amount of money that he finishes, if it goes 7 games, he finished with more than 3 points in this series. So although Hyman, that's definitely a big loss for the Edmonton Oilers, I think that their forward core just is so much more deeper this year with some of the guys that they brought in this summer, as well as the fact that Draisaitl being fully healthy is going to be a big-time difference maker, especially another guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins last year in the Cup final. Only 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. Also, I should say it out of the way, I'm picking Edmonton to win this in 7 games. I don't know why I started with this. Yeah, let's get back into it. When looking at this, the gap between these two teams that I think is the largest, it's the Oilers penalty kill versus the Panthers power play. The Oilers penalty kill right now is 66%. It has been abysmal at times. You look at that. They single-handedly lost game 1 against the Dallas Stars because of the penalty kill and taking stupid penalties versus the Florida Panthers this year in both the regular season and the playoffs have been clicking at around 23%. Not some kind of like all-time power play, don't get me wrong, but consistently like top 8 through 12 kind of numbers. So I think this is really just going to come down to this series potentially, outside of the Stuart Skinner X factor, which we'll talk about. Can the Edmonton Oilers keep it at 5-on-5? Because I do think that they are the better 5-on-5 team, considering what they've been able to do, keeping it all in front of Stuart Skinner in the net front, rather cleared out in terms of him being able to see every shot through. Their defense has been so awesome, only allowing 1.85 goals at 5-on-5 per 60. The expected goals are only 2.25, and they're adding Matthias Ekholm. Like, they're adding Ekholm. You look at the night and day difference between these two defense cores last year versus this. Last year, it was Ekholm Bouchard top pair, Nurse Ceci second pair, and then Kulak Desharnais as the third pair. This year, Ekholm Bouchard again, Nurse Kulak / Stetcher. Kulak's been playing damn good, and Stetcher's been a nice add. And Wallman / Klingberg. Wallman being on that third pair as your third pair righty is such an upgrade, and they're actually able to transport the puck out of their own zone compared to last year, where outside of that top pair, they massively struggled in that regard. So I think that as long as Edmonton can keep this at 5-on-5 the way that they've been able to dominate, even especially with the forward depth compared to last year, I think that Edmonton will win this series. Now, if they do take dumb penalties, if Florida's rats like Marchand and Tkachuk are able to get in the heads of the Edmonton Oilers and they take these dumb penalties, I think that Florida probably will win this series. You just need to get this at 5-on-5, and you need to just keep your defensive principles if you're the Edmonton Oilers. Now, thankfully, when looking at power play opportunities allowed in these playoffs, Edmonton has been the far more disciplined team. They've only allowed 40 power play opportunities in 16 games in these playoffs. You compare that to the Florida Panthers, 56 and 17. So the other thing is Florida does have a good penalty kill, but also I think we can agree Edmonton's power play is better. So it goes flip side as well. Panthers cannot be taking dumb penalties like they did against other teams, like the Carolina Hurricanes power play. That power play is utter dog shit. That was 25th in the entire NHL. You can get in their heads by maybe giving out some dirty hits in that series. You cannot do that against the Edmonton Oilers. Like, that is going to be such a big difference in this series. In net, Bobrovsky is definitely better than Stuart Skinner, but Stuart Skinner has been playing damn good in these playoffs. Stuart Skinner can only have like one stinker of a game, I would say, if he has two, which he kind of did early on in the series last year, and as a result, they got down 3-0 and could not eventually overcome it. But Bobrovsky's definitely a better player, but I think that it is a little bit overstated. Bobrovsky, coming into last year, had a .915 in the regular season, was balling out in the playoffs. Bobrovsky was struggling a little bit in the regular season and in these playoffs until he eventually played the Toronto Maple Leafs games 5 through 7, who are absolutely horrible, and then the Corsi Kings and the Carolina Hurricanes. So I think the goalie gap is a little bit closer than people are making it out to seem. If I was to break it down like by position group, and I think Superstars is its own position group, Edmonton has the edge in terms of superstars, even though I love Barkov. He's better defensively than any of those guys. He does not have the offensive ceiling that McDavid and Draisaitl have, and whoever their second best player is. So you look at the top three players in these series on each side, it clearly leans Edmonton, and I do think superstars mainly win series. Barkov, again, still a superstar. The forward core, I would go with Florida because they lost Zach Hyman, even with them getting Leon Draisaitl back. You look at that third line. If Florida's going to win this series, that third line has to be fantastic as well. The defense core, I would go Edmonton, adding a guy like Ekholm back in the mix. Even without Ekholm, I think you could argue Edmonton to a degree. Florida, again, Florida's a very good team. I feel like this is going to come out as me absolutely shitting on Florida. Like, I'm having it going 7. I'm not saying Edmonton's winning this series in 5 games, but I think Edmonton, in terms of a net, you got to go with Florida just because Bobrovsky is far more consistent, far more experienced than Stuart Skinner. The power play definitely goes to Edmonton. Even without Hyman net front, I think it's going to be very effective in this series. And the penalty kill might be the biggest gap in this series. It is clearly the Florida Panthers. In terms of 2 X factors in the series, by X factors, I mean like not top 3 players on their respective teams, because obviously those guys got to play good. For Edmonton, it's got to be Matthias Ekholm, considering the fact we've only seen him in 1 game in these playoffs. He only played 16 minutes in those games. He did have an assist and was a +2, but had a 33% expected goals percentage, which wasn't very ideal. So after another 6 days of rest, he probably returned, if we're going to be honest, he probably returned at 75 to 80%. Like, there's no way he waited until 100% in the Western Conference Finals to come back for his team. But can he get to 85, 90, 95% in this series. If that is the case, Edmonton is genuinely like one of the best defense scores of recent memory. If they have a 90% fully healthy Matthias Ekholm, when looking at Ekholm and Bouchard has been one of the best pairs in the entire NHL for the past 3 years. The fact that they have Nurse, $9.25 million is far too much. But as a player, he can be an effective number 3, or you have Jake Wallman in that number 3 role. And Klingberg and Wallman have been such a good pair this season when looking at them in terms of being able to transport the puck. Yeah, it's a very good defense score. It's really going to hinge on whether or not Ekholm is healthy, because I think he can really they can shut down their top 9 in totality if they have that top pair clicking to the level that they have in prior years. But again, they have the depth. Last year, Ekholm and Bouchard had to play 25, 26 minutes a night, probably even more, to actually be able to slow down come playoff time. This year, they have far more depth within their defense core, where they don't have to stretch those guys completely thin. And on the flip side for Florida, I'm also going to go with the left-handed Swedish defenseman, Gustav Forsling. Although, again, they've made the Stanley Cup final yet again, he has not had nearly the impact to the same degree as last year. He's still been good. I'm not trying to shit on him entirely. But last year had 13 points in 24 games and was a +9, playing around 23-30 a night for the Florida Panthers. This year, he only has 4 points in 17 games with a -0.7 expected goals percentage. Again, he's playing tougher minutes. That's not a perfect stat there. But Ekblad has kind of been their number one. Ekblad has been playing more than Forsling in these playoffs and has 11 points in 13 games. Forsling needs to yet again be that dominant number 1 defenseman that we saw last year on their playoff run, and especially in the Stanley Cup final. Again, Ekblad's going to be the more offensive guy. The point totals are very impressive, but even Ekblad's underlying numbers at 5-on-5 have been better than Forsling, and that's awesome. They're going to need Ekblad to also play like a legit number 2, but if they want to win in this series, again, going up against Bouchard has been so good in the playoffs, going up against Ekholm, going up against McDavid and Draisaitl off the rush, they're going to need Forsling to really step up in a big way and be that top 12 defenseman in the entire NHL that we know that he is capable of at the end of the day. I keep on replaying. I know it's one isolated event, but that turnover to Sebastian was so bad. What was it, Game 5? Like, that was so egregious. But I think that he's going to step up when the moment arrives and potentially be able to slow down the Edmonton Oilers. But yeah, those two Swedish lefties that have, in terms of Ekholm coming off an injury and Forsling not quite being to the level that we expect from Forsling, especially offensively. Not saying he's some offensive demon, but 4 points in 17 games is not going to exactly get it done. Those are the two X factors for me. Obviously, McDavid's got to play good. Draisaitl, Barkov needs to slow down McDavid and Draisaitl. But in terms of more, not middle of the lineup guys, but their 4 through 6 players, there's just been a little bit of variability from those guys, and they need to be dialed the hell in. Just when looking at the Edmonton Oilers, I feel like they're kind of like a team of destiny going back to this. My head is thinking Florida Panthers, just because, again, no injuries, have been there, done that, won the Stanley Cup, and arguably have the better coach, although Knoblauch has been awesome as well. They just seem like a team of destiny. It's similarly to the 2019 Blues to a degree. I think on paper, the Boston Bruins are a better team with legends like Chara, Bergeron, Marchand, Rask, Krejci, Pasternak, McAvoy were young, but still very good players. The St. Louis Blues were still a very good team in their own right, but they eventually got it done. So yeah, the head, I know I'm kind of copping out with this. The head is saying Florida in 7, but the heart is saying Edmonton Oilers in 7. And I think I'm going to go with the Oilers in 7, not to reference the other guys, because I think it's kind of lazy, but with Gretzky lost his first Stanley Cup, then the next year won a Crosby. I think that kind of fate is lining up for the Edmonton Oilers to win this. Con McDavid's going to have at least 1.8 points per game. Draisaitl, I'm going to need 1.5 at least from you. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, again, is the biggest the forward X factor for the Edmonton Oilers. No shit, he's their 3rd best forward, but still, when looking at him last year in the Stanley Cup final, did not really come to play. This year, I need far more out of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and he was fantastic in the Western Conference Finals, 9 points in the first 4 games of that series. So yeah, I got Edmonton in 7. I think last year I picked Edmonton in 7 too, so that's a bad side. It's a bad side, but I've doubted. I think I picked against Edmonton every single series in this year's playoffs. So I'm picking them now. I think that they get it done. But this is genuinely one of the closest Stanley Cup finals, talent-wise, that we have had going into it. I don't think that's an exaggeration, and it truly is. In terms of, I had it only as my 5th or 6th most anticipated, again, just because it is a rematch. There's not a ton of juice for Florida if they win it, you know what I'm saying? But in terms of just like high-level ball, high-level puck, is probably only behind Tampa in Colorado in 2022. Like that was truly an insane matchup. Like Tampa going for their third straight, Colorado with one of the most loaded rosters you'll ever see in the salary cap era. But this is up there, man. Who else? I guess Pittsburgh, San Jose in 2016 was also just two titans of a team finally meeting in the Stanley Cup final. But yeah, this is going to be fucking awesome. Edmonton Oilers in 7. Also, I should say I have a $23 future at 11-1 that I placed at the start of December on the Edmonton Oilers. So I'm going to be rooting for Edmonton, even though I am South Florida ride or die. You Miami, go Canes, go Cats. I'm definitely going to be rooting for the Edmonton Oilers. And I feel like I should not. It'd be kind of a bitch move to hedge, to pick like the Florida Panthers in 6 or 7 games and then still have the Edmonton Oilers ticket. I got to ride with Edmonton. I got to ride with Edmonton all the way through. And that is exactly what we are doing. Let's move on to the New York Islanders, though. The Islanders got busy. Darsh got busy. Well, actually, he got busy with the Lamoriello extension that he previously agreed on. But Palmieri signed 2 years, $4.75 million. I was pretty jacked up for this in the moment, not calling it like the steal of the century. I have come a little bit back down to earth, and I don't love it as much. It's fine. He did have 24 goals, 24 assists, 48 points, but I didn't see this stat. He only had 7 points in 22 games after Brock Nelson was traded, so that's a little bit concerning. I think that is just like he played with Brock for the last 4 years, so he didn't have as much chemistry with those other guys. I think he's going to be an effective 40-ish point guy next season. Maybe high 30s, and is your ideal middle six forward, and you could trade him next season. But yeah, this probably should have been closer to $4 million for him to be right. And especially when you add on top of the fact that he has a no trade clause this season and a 16-team modified no trade clause the following season. To get that much protection, that cap hit should have been much lower. Should have been coming in at around $4 million. Again, with the whole Palmieri situation, he should have been traded at this year's deadline. You should have got a second and a third round pick. Apparently, Lamoriello, there was no offer for a first round pick, but you should have traded him and moved on and brought in the youth movement. Darsh was in a tough spot. Do you let him walk for absolutely nothing, or do you sign him to this shorter 2-year deal? I was surprised Lou even negotiated a 2-year deal. I was expecting some kind of 4-year deal if Lou Lamoriello did end up signing Palmieri. But it's fine. It's just fine. I definitely came out and was very defensive of it. But yeah, when thinking about it a little bit more, he's 34 years old. I think his play style will age pretty well, but I don't think he's gonna have the goal scoring impact next year going from Nelson to Pajot or Cal Ritchie as his center. Nelson was just such a good line mate with Palmieri. But I think next season, if the Islanders are out of it, you're gonna be able to trade him still for a second round pick at half retained. Just should have done it this goddamn season. On the flip side of that, going from player to manager, Chris Lamoriello apparently got an extension from the New York Islanders. Lamoriello signed an extension before he got fired, which if you follow me on Twitter, you know my thoughts on this. Like, that's all on the ownership. I don't know how the fucking ownership allows that to happen. Like, how, when you're not certain of the future of Lou, you say, okay, but you want your son to get extended on a 2 to 3 year deal. And I'm not acting like Chris Lamoriello makes $4 million, but like, How are you so incompetent? If you don't know that his father is going to be back, how do you extend the son? I don't think it's going to be like make or break for Darsh if he can't. He's just probably not going to listen to Chris Lamoriello, which sucks because you'd rather have an assistant general manager that he trusts there. But I don't think the Darsh era is going to be ruined by Chris Lamoriello, who's basically going to be a glorified secretary next season. It's a bad look for the franchise. I got to be honest in terms of Chris Lamoriello. Somehow the stat is he's made the playoffs 2 out of 25 seasons as a AHL general manager. Like, it is absolutely apocalyptic. He is without a doubt the number 1 Nepo baby in hockey right now. But it's funny, if anything. Lamoriello, just one final FU. Like, the first 2 big news stories out of the Islanders in the Darsh era is Palmieri getting extended. That was a Lou Lamoriello extension. And then Chris Lamoriello getting extended right when Lou Lamoriello was about to leave. Hopefully it's false. Hopefully he's gone. But yeah, I don't want him anywhere near this team making serious decisions or developing players in Bridgeport. We're going to move on from my little Islander segment, though, to talk about the 2 big trade topics of late. Jason Robertson kind of came out of nowhere. Rick DeWally from the Vancouver market and Jeff Merrick of Daily Faceoff said that he could be available. They didn't say like, oh, they're actively shopping him, but Dallas would listen to some offers. Considering the fact that he does only have 1 year left at $7.75 million. When looking at Robertson, It's kind of tough because you see that 2023 season, the 109 points, 46 goals, and that's what really allures you in. He still has been point per game almost the last 2 years and very good defensively, but he is a very intriguing target. When looking at this from the Dallas perspective, should they trade him? I think it really just depends what he wants on a contract extension this summer. If he wants to be way closer to Mikko Rantanen, then Wyatt Johnston, Rupe Hintz, Heiskanen, who are all around $8.4 million. If he wants to be 11.25, he's obviously not getting Rantanen money, but if he wants that kind of money, I could see an argument to trade him this summer, although next season he's on a fantastic deal. Trade him this summer, get younger, maybe get some picks, open up some salary cap space, be able to re-sign Granlund, Duchesne, and Ben on kind of shorter-term deals and think more to the future. But this guy is a 25-year-old stud. Like it's really, really weird if you're Dallas to potentially move him unless his ask is so astronomical. But considering it is Dallas, considering we've seen all these guys take relatively cheap deals, I don't really think that this is the case. I don't think that they should quite be moving off Jason Robertson unless the package really, really, really wows you in terms of bringing in guys in their mid to early 20s that are on very cost-controlled kind of contracts. When looking at potential markets for Jason Robertson, I think the LA Kings make a lot of sense considering he's from Los Angeles. If you could get a Jordan Spence and Alex Lafreniere who are younger than Robertson and a lot more team-controlled in bunch of picks, I think that could make some sense. The Utah Mammoth obviously make a shit ton of sense. Sean Durzi and a bunch of prospects and picks could be the move. If I'm the Mammoth, I'm happily bringing in Jason Robertson to just beef up my forward core and make it definitely playoff level. But yeah, if I'm Dallas, I think I'm just running back the team minus Peter DeBoer. I'm letting Duchesne walk. I'm letting Ben walk, then doing something huge like this. I don't think Jason Robertson is the problem, considering the fact that he actually showed up in the Edmonton Oilers series. What did he have? 3 goals. He has pretty solid playoff numbers. And even this season, he came off a leg break, but after the first 20 games, he was like 40 goal pace, 50 assist, kind of like back, not fully back to 2023 version, but he's been great. Every single team should be over this. The Seattle Kraken, Carolina Hurricanes, Detroit. He actually played some seasons in Detroit when he was growing up. The one thing that I think does not make a ton of sense is my New York Islanders and Noah Dobson trade. I think Dobson's a pretty bad fit in Dallas just because he's like the same age as Heiskanen and Harley. He's not going to be cheap. He's basically just like a worse version of Thomas Harley in terms of a more so offensive defenseman. Like, would he even play top power play on your team? I don't think that they should do that. But I just don't fully believe that this is exactly the case compared to Marco Rossi, which we're about to get into, where I think that he most likely will get moved this offseason. I think that they're just testing the market. If an offer absolutely blows them away, I think you definitely need to look at that. But right now for Dallas, I don't think, unless they plan on bringing some coach that is so high pace, high tempo, because Jason Robertson is one of the slowest skaters in the NHL when looking at these stats. 6'3", extremely skilled, but had the 4th slowest 18 miles per hour burst per 60 in the NHL and 9th fewest 20 mile per hour. Now, granted, that list does have other guys like Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Ovechkin, and Mark Stone that are also pretty damn good players, but he is very slow. Maybe that's their one reservation against him, but it really is like, if the stats are there, I'm not going to care about the skating as much. Like if he did like completely regress to a 65 to 70 point guy after that 109 point season, I could maybe see you saying, okay, teams have figured him out. We got to move off him. But no, if anything, from the 2023 season, he's really honed in his defensive game since then to make him one of the most valuable wingers in the entire NHL. All the packages that I'm seeing for him, for the most part, are pretty bullshit. One thing that Babiak did send me was a potential DeBrincat and ASP trade. I know Detroit fans who absolutely love ASP wouldn't do that, but that does make some sense to a degree in terms of ASP coming in and being that right-handed defenseman, being that offensive beast that could eventually run their top power play, and DeBrincat's still a highly effective player. It really just depends where you land on DeBrincat and Robertson in that situation, but that was just one thing that really caught my eye. A lot of people are offering bullshit, man, for him. It's so annoying seeing. I mean, I can't talk. I got absolutely cooked for my Islanders Sharks, which I'm going to revise when we get to that. But the trade seasons are absolutely out of control. Moving on to the Rossi, though, because I think that this is a situation where it's looking like a trade is going to happen, considering the fact that they're not even willing to sign Rossi at 7 years, $7-ish million. It initially came out that it was $8 million. I always thought that was a little bit absurd. $8 million for a guy that only had a 60-point season. But then it was later said around 7x7 for a 23-year-old that had 60 points. But there are serious reservations about Rossi that I think are way more valid than Jason Robertson's skating ability, considering he's a 5'9" center that does play with elite line mates for the most part. He was basically stapled to one of Kaprizov and Boldy as well as Zuccarello as that third winger. Like if you look on the J Fresh card, you usually just only care about the even strength defense, the finishing, the even strength offense. But in terms of the teammates percentile, he was in the 99th percentile. So I understand why Bill Guerin might want to move off him. If you're going to move off him, you need actual NHL players because you're Minnesota, because you actually have the cap space this summer. I don't think you're trading him for just picks and prospects. Philadelphia apparently didn't want to trade Tyson Forrester or their late first round pick this year for them. I think Philadelphia should do something like that in a heartbeat for the Edmonton or the Colorado pick, even that's 22nd overall. They badly need center help, even though they're going to be selecting one at 6th overall. So for Rossi, yeah, for Minnesota, my Islanders, I've obviously joked around and said, I think it actually could be a decent deal, the Pajot and the Colorado first-round pick. If they were willing to take the Colorado first-round pick this year, I think that would make sense in terms of Pajot, a one-year plug-in guy at $5 million, and then next summer use that salary cap more efficiently. But yeah, I think because the problem was with Rossi. It's not like he has 2 years left at $5 million where you're getting surplus value. You're plugging him in, and if you're trading for him, you're probably saying that you want to win relatively soon. It's not like he's going to the San Jose Sharks or something like that where you can wait the first 2 years. Maybe he's not exactly worth $7 million. So I think that this is going to play out. I think that he is going to end up getting traded, or his contract demands are just going to have to come down to $6 million. And considering the fact that Matthew Boldy signed that 7x7, I know it was a flat cap system, I can understand why Bill Guerin is kind of giving a hard out. He only offered 5x5. I imagine if they went to 7 or 8 years, that would naturally go up to 7 or to 6.5. But at the end of the day, there is a world where Rossi is not a center, I think, going forward. I think that is definitely valuable. You don't see a ton of 5'9" centers. I know that that's backwards, but he also, I think, on a 7-year deal at $7 million would eventually be worth it on the wing, if that makes sense. So a team should eventually trade for Marco Rossi. If the price is a late first round pick, and if you're a team that has salary cap that's coming out of a rebuild, retool, you should be all over him. Just some fits, I definitely understand. Like for my New York Islanders, I would like it a lot, but I understand why some of the fan base wants more of a bigger swing, like a Marner or a Robertson or an Ehlers, a more established guy. Because at the end of the day, Rossi's probably not going to be the number one center on the Islanders, and we need to go big game hunting. We're not winning with a center duo of Bo Horvat and Marco Rossi. So this is more of a Philadelphia would have made a decent amount of success since trying to think of who else. Montreal, to a degree, they already have some smaller guys, but I think him as your second line center could work down the line. Utah Mammoth, it's thrown out the Mammoth for everybody. But yeah, I think he is going to end up getting traded. It's just going to depend on the price. And I think the price is going to be a lot less than people think because the offer sheet compensation up to $9 million, it's only a first and a third round pick. So no one's offer sheeting him $9 million. They might offer sheet him in that $7 million range, which is only one first round pick. So I don't know why people are acting like my Pajot and a first round pick is absolutely insane, considering the fact that the first round pick is what they would get from any half decent team. And Pajot next year would be positive value. But we're going to move on. No more Pajot and first round pick talk. Next up, Tyson Forrester has re-signed with the Philadelphia Flyers. 2 years, $3.75 million, 25 goals, 18 assists, 43 points last year. Funny enough, he turned it on. He went like turbo mode after Tortorella got fired. 9 goals, 3 assists, 12 points in his final 11 games. So part of that's luck. Obviously, he's not going to be a 65 goal pace guy now that Tortorella's out of the building. But he definitely showed life once he had more room to kind of operate in a non-Tortorella system. I like this a decent amount. Definitely for the next 2 years, it's great value. I probably would have tried to do something a little bit more long-term. I'm not saying a 6 or 7 year deal because he hasn't proven enough, but I probably would have tried to get this to a 3-year deal at 4.3, 4.4, or a 4-year deal at 4.75, $5 million, just 2 years. I get you're definitely seeing if the player is legit, if he can continuously put up 25 goals, 25 assists, or something like that. But at 23, 24 years old, considering his track record, I think I would have gone a little bit more term to get a little bit more surplus value because in the next 2 years, Philly's not doing jack shit. If we're going to be honest, like they're not, maybe in that second year, they could be fighting for a playoff spot, but I don't anticipate that. So like, you're just going to let him increase his role the next 2 years, bump up his stats. And then in the summer of 2027, he's going to say, yeah, now I want a 7x7. I'm a consistent 25 goal, 55 guy. The salary cap is exploding. So I'm usually big on betting on players, especially when you're Philadelphia and you do have some salary cap. You can make some mistakes. Again, not saying a 7x7, but I would have liked a 4 or 5 year deal here to kind of just let him grow into it. And if it ended up not working, even if it didn't end up working, I think we can say at this point, Tyson Forster is going to be a 20-20 kind of guy. At 5.5 on a 5 or 6 year or 5 year deal or something like that, that would have been perfectly fine. Maybe his camp, again, just only wanted 2 years, only wanted this bridge deal. And again, it's a good bridge deal the next 2 years. But I think they should have gone a little bit more long-term like they did with Noah Cates. 4 years, $4 million. When looking at him, 37 points this season, 38 points in 2023. His defensive metrics in 2023 and 2024 were among some of the best in the NHL. Not playing the hardest competition of all time. But yeah, I think that this is their 3C of the rebuild. He's 26 years old at this point. So this deal compared to Forrester, where we wanted some more term because it kind of would have just taken him through his prime. Cates is 26, so a 4-year deal. Makes perfect sense. He just needs to be like what he was this season for that to be a very good deal. Next year should be worth $4 million. And as the salary cap continues to increase, this is going to be a really good deal for Philly in my books. Again, not going to end up being a slam dunk, but I think he's going to be a $5 to $6 million player come 2027, 2028. Players like him are valued in terms of third line center, defensive kind of guys. So to be able to lock him up like this, I really like this a decent amount from Briere. I don't know why I blanked the general manager's name. Like last year, he was kind of in the doghouse with Tortorella. This year, kind of got out of it, and he really flourished yet again. Maybe won't be 38 points as Philadelphia continues to add centers, and he kind of gets pushed down in terms of ice time. But even if he's just 34 points and gives you a top 20 percentile defensive analytics in a 15, 14 minute a night role at $4 million, pretty damn good deal by Briere. Next up, this one's a wonky extension. You talk about wanting term. I want term to younger guys. Yanni Gourde got 6 years, $2.33 million. I like this deal a decent amount just because Tampa Bay, like, they're going to suck in 3 to 4 years. Like, even the most optimistic Tampa Bay fan probably thinks 2029 is their final year where they could potentially win a Stanley Cup. Like, could. For me, it's probably closer to 2027 or 2028. I mean, you could say right now it's close considering they've lost to Florida in the first round the last 5 years. But I still think that that's more so. I think this year they were definitely probably the third best team in the Eastern Conference, arguably the second. I think if they play Toronto, that probably goes 6 or 7. I know people are going to scream, oh, they only won 5 with Florida. Meanwhile, Toronto was matchups are different. But yeah, I think Tampa is still a very good team. For Gourde, he's definitely regressed a decent amount, but did have 14 points in 21 games with Tampa. Granted, that was only 1 goal. But yeah, he had back-to-back 48-point seasons with the Seattle Kraken. Then last year only had 33. This year only had 37, granted in 57 games. But yeah, he's kind of like Noah Cates. He's a 30-ish point, very good defensive third-line center. And for Tampa Bay, considering the fact that they have a lot of money, very good deals, but they have a lot of money tied up to the top guys, you need to sign low, cheap guys. And this is what they tried to do with Killorn, what they tried to do with Palat, what they tried to do with Steven Stamkos. Basically say, you're going to be a Lightning for life. You're going to have to take a little bit of a lower AAV, but we're going to pay you till you're 40 years old. So yeah, I think for Gourde, he realized... Granted, he didn't leave. He got expansion drafted, but like he was probably like, the grass is way green. The grass is not always greener on the other side. Seattle, I'm sure he had a good time, but not a lot of winning there. If he hit the open market, I'm not sure any true contender would have been willing to offer him this deal or willing to offer him serious money over 3 to 4 years. So I think he just realized, like, screw it. I'm a Tampa Bay legend, not like he's actually getting his jersey retired or anything, but he has the opportunity to be truly remembered as a part of this core, a big part of this core. Yeah, just give me 35 points next season, the next 2 to 3 years, and good defensive metrics, and I think Tampa is laughing to the bank. Even at the end of this deal, like, the league minimum is going to be what, like $1.1, $1.2 million. Like, this is going to be nothing relative to the cap. And I said this on my Instagram story, but like people crying about this being cap circumvention or something like this. Toronto literally did the exact same thing last year with Chris Tanev. Granted, Chris Tanev's obviously a much better player right now. That's why he got almost double the AAV. But they signed him to a 6-year deal when he was 34 years old, basically saying like, yeah, you're going to have a medical injury. Chris Tannett's body's probably just going to break down, if we're going to be honest, because he just is such a dog out there. But yeah, you're going to go on LTIR the final 2 to 3 years of this deal. But for Tampa Bay, it especially Toronto, he's going to have to go on LTIR because they're probably going to be still be a competitive team in 5 to 6 years as long as they have Matthews and Nylander. But yeah, for Tampa, there's a decent chance that Gourde just fully plays out this deal and they just blow it up by 2029. They're trading Braden Point, they're trading Jake Gensel and other guys, Brandon Hagel, and just nuking it. And Yanni Gourde gets the captaincy once Hedman retires in 2028 and just season that next generation of the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's a goofy deal. It definitely makes your head scratch for a second, but then you realize that they are the definition of like all in the next 2 to 3 years. So yeah, and especially that deal definitely looks better. Although they gave up a lot, 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick to get Bjorkstrand, to get Gourde. They're going to have Bjorkstrand next season at a reasonable $5.5 million. And now they got Gourde locked up, not rentals, by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, it's the other thing, like the Hagel, that obviously worked out fantastic. But Tampa tends to not really trade for the rental. It worked out great for Hagel, worked out shit for Tanner Janelle. But they ended up getting a second and a fourth to move off Tanner Janelle. But now for this one, they look like they are retaining their guys. Lane Lambert to the Seattle Kraken. Moving on, ex-Islanders coach, obviously was the protege for Barry Trotz for so many years. Went from Nashville to Washington to my New York Islanders. Lane Lambert, it's tough. He just doesn't exactly exude excitement in terms of being a leader. And I'm not saying you have to be the most outspoken hype man coach of all time to be successful, but not exactly a leader of men, in my opinion. Still pretty good at X's and O's, especially on the defensive side. And he did do good work with Toronto the last couple of years. But for Seattle, I said it at the time when they got rid of Dan Blyesman, it just screamed a role that was going to be taken by a recycled head coach that couldn't really land any of the half-decent jobs, or a first-time head coach that was just going to get put out to pasture to get slaughtered. And that's basically what happened. Like Lane Lambert, I doubt that he was heavily in the mix for some of the other top jobs this summer. I know that he wasn't for like the New York Rangers, Anaheim Ducks, even the Boston Bruins. I don't think that he interviewed for. It was mainly just this job. The defense core maybe could be decent for Seattle this season when looking at the pieces that they have. I really like Vince Dunn. If he can stay fully healthy, Montour isn't fully washed yet, and he can maybe optimize the most out of Larson and Alexiak, 2 guys that really like to throw the body and be physical defensive defensemen, as well as Riker Evans was very impressive in his rookie season. He could give you 30, maybe even 35 points. So it starts with defense, definitely for Lane Lambert, and I think that is potentially probably the strength of the team after they traded a lot of forwards this summer. Unless they bring in forwards, and Joey Daccord proved that he's a legit starter. So they can be solid defensively. At the end of the day, though, I go back to it. I don't think you can be a high-level playoff team, or maybe even a playoff team, although they did it in 2023, with Jared McCann as your best forward, as Benier is playing the number 1 center role, or I guess Chandler Stevenson. Like, this team is just painfully bleh. And to bring in Lane Lambert after firing Dan Blyesma after 1 season, who does have a very impressive pedigree prior and developed a lot of the guys of the Pittsburgh Penguins, just a really confusing hire by Seattle, and I can't say that I like it to a degree. I'm rooting for Lane Lambert, especially now that if he took a job in the Eastern Conference, I might be rooting against him. I hope he does good in Seattle. Maybe the duo of Lambert and Botterill is like a low-key tankathon kind of management assembled. But yeah, sometimes these second-round head coaches work out, but I think that this situation, it being his second time and the first time really wasn't that impressive, although he did make the playoffs once. This time, it's not only the first time was so bad, it's also the new job is so bad where I just can't really see it being successful. I hate to shit on the Seattle Kraken. I feel like I talk down on them a lot, but they just have a painfully average roster. And unless someone falls to them at 8th overall this year or they win the lottery next season, I don't see that changing anytime soon. We're going to move on to the CHL NCAA invasion right now that is going on. When looking at it previously, like prior 2 to 3 weeks, we had some news get announced regarding that. Guys like Malcolm Spence, Henry Muse going to Michigan. Shit is fully at the fan now. When looking at guys like Cole Reshny and Keaton Verhoff now going to UND, Reshny going to be a top 20 pick most likely. Verhoff top 5 in the 2026 draft. Jackson Smith is heading to Penn State. Martone might be heading to Penn State on like a $250,000 offer. By the way that they're circumventing NIL is they're going to have the guys do the ads in Canada. They can't technically like do ads in America. There was a tweet about that explaining it. And Caden Lindstrom is apparently going to Michigan State. McKenna apparently has like a $1 million offer to go to Michigan State. It's fucking nuts, but it makes sense when you're a near generational talent and you're taking advantage of your name, image, and likeness like that when all the spotlight's going to be on you next season. So yeah, this was inevitable. When it was initially theorized or the class action lawsuit came up in terms of CHLers being able to come to NCAAs, I had people disagreeing with me heavily, being like, CHLers aren't going to want to come to NCAAs. At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with the CHL. I love the CHL, and I think if they adapt, it's going to maintain and be a very successful league and system. But at the end of the day, the CHL has nothing on the NCAAs. The way that the college athletes are treated, the WHL, you got to be taking 8 to 10 hour bus drives across Western Canada. You live in some small town and you're an amateur still, kind of, but basically a professional player with not a ton to do, versus the college lifestyle, going to University of Michigan, going to Boston College, Boston University. You're flying to different games. You have state-of-the-art facilities, and you're getting a better education on top of just a better social life and all that. It's not debatable, and we're seeing that with these guys come over and transfer. It's only going to happen. Once McKenna comes, it's basically over. I saw Caleb Desnoyers after he got eliminated. They had something, and he got named the QMJHL captain for next season, or the Montcalm. I'm going to botch that name. The Wildcats captain next season. So maybe he's not going, but a lot of the guys are going to end up going. I think Misa and Schaefer still are waiting if they're going to play in the NHL next year or go to college. That's why I haven't heard anything on them. But everybody's coming over, man. And I think that the way that you combat this is you lower the age in the CHL to 15. You allow some of your top talents to play 2 to 3 years in the CHL before they jump over to the OHL. And maybe you lower the max age. What is it? You got to be 20 entering the season, down to 19. Once you're 21 years old, go play U Sports. Go play college hockey. The other thing is we need more colleges in the States to start having hockey programs, because there is only a finite amount. What is there, like 50 right now? It's not nearly enough. Hopefully they continue to grow so then Americans don't get absolutely screwed by these Canadians coming over. But yeah, I think the CHLers lowering the age and having some kind of joint thing with the USHL. I know that they're going to scoff at that, but the USHL being involved in the Memorial Cup, I think would be awesome in terms of the two leagues, in terms of having 4 leagues come together, just considering now at the top, everything's funneling into college. So I think why not? Previously, the USHL only funneled into college. Now everybody does. So why not integrate the USHL to a degree? The USHL, not remotely as good as the OHL, and WHL, it's not that far behind the QMJHL at this point. I don't think that's ridiculous to say that. So I would love to see integration. I do agree that some guys might opt, Americans might opt to go to the CHL now than the USHL. But I think having all of them kind of converge, or having the USHL fold into the OHL, I don't know how many fucking teams, that'd be way too many teams, but having something like that maybe could make some sense. But I think most likely just have the Q, the W, the O, and the U, at the junior college system, I think would be really cool in terms of junior hockey. And I think that would keep it rather competitive compared to just spread out nowadays. But we're going to move on from that. The Islanders and the Sharks trade rumors. I tweeted something out, and it was kind of ridiculous how much I asked for the Sharks. The overall point is, unless you get your socks blown off by an offer, if you're Matthew Darsh, you just take Matthew Schaefer based on what we're hearing from the Combine. That's going to be the pick. He wants his Victor Hedman 2.0. But yeah, I think you just don't overcomplicate this unless the Sharks, I initially said 2nd overall in Dickinson. I'll revise that to 2nd overall in either 42nd in this year's draft and like another 3rd round pick for Dickinson in 2nd overall. Straight up Dickinson in 2nd overall for 1st. Sharks would not consider that at all. But I understand that anything that I'm going to offer that I would say that the Islanders would take for the 2nd overall in assets for San Jose to move up, the Sharks probably won't do, because I'm Team Schaefer. I don't want to move out of that pick. But yeah, there was some rumors from Pagnotta. But at the end of the day, I don't expect anything to materialize on that. I don't think we really need to spend too much time. Chicago moving from 3 to 1, that would cost even more considering the gap of that 3 through 6. Even though people say, oh, you can take Hagens there, there still is a huge gap. Not a huge gap, but there's still a gap between Schaefer and Misa. Like the San Jose trade, I'd be willing to do. I don't think I want to do the 3rd overall pick. What else do we got? Yeah, so I think that there's like a 5% chance of that happening. We are going to move on to our mailbag now. We got this from Trod Hockey. Even if Florida wins the cup, it's not as impressive as Tampa Bay's run. Let me just take water real quick. For this, I would disagree. Mainly because of you look at the two teams that Florida beat in their Stanley Cup Finals versus the two teams that Tampa Bay beat in their Stanley Cup Finals. No disrespect to the 2020 Dallas Stars. They were a very good team. I believe they were a top 4 seed in that year's playoffs. But they're not the Dallas Stars that we know now. Even Sagan and Ben were starting to regress to a degree. Heiskanen had a legendary run, but they were not some stud Western Conference team. Obviously, 2021, the Montreal Canadiens is about as easy as you're going to find in terms of a Stanley Cup final opponent, especially considering the fact that Carey Price just ran out of gas at that point. The first 3 rounds, out of this world, one of the best playoff runs of all time. But by then, he was just dog tired considering what he had to do, and the rest of the team was just painfully mediocre. You compare that to Florida, Edmonton last year, maybe not the most perfect team, but still McDavid, Draisaitl, beast, even though Jonas was 50%. This year, though, beating that Edmonton team would be a damn impressive. Winning the Stanley Cup regardless is very impressive, but this is a true battle of the Titans. Tampa Bay never really had that. Or I guess that they did have that in 2020 and they lost it. I know that they did have some injuries back then and they lost their third line. But yeah, and you can maybe say, although I'm an Islanders fan, I'm biased. I really like those 2020, 2021 Islanders teams. You can maybe say Tampa's path to the Stanley Cup final was a little bit harder, but not really to a degree. Florida still, last year they had to beat a good Rangers team in the Eastern Conference Finals that won the President's Trophy. In the second round, they beat a 109-point Boston Bruins team. In the first round, they still beat Tampa Bay, who still had a lot of pieces around. They were very shallow, but still took care of business easily there. In 2023, their run to the Stanley Cup Final was so impressive. Beat the greatest regular season team of all time, then went 8-1 over the next 9 games to make it to the Stanley Cup Final. Swept the Canes, won in 5 games against Toronto. So yeah, I think Florida's, if they win this year, especially just given the conference finals, you could argue that the 2021 Tampa Bay Lightning were better than any team that Florida won with, and I probably agree with you on that. But in terms of impressive as a run, no. Considering the opponents, I got to disagree. Jordan Schlawlesser says, is Corey Perry a Hockey Hall of Famer? And yeah, I think entering the summer of 2019, it was looking like he wasn't going to be a Hall of Famer, although he did have that Hart Trophy. He was coming off a season where he only had 10 points in 31 games. He only had like 776 career points. He had like the international medals to be a Hall of Famer, but not the consistency throughout his career, where I was probably going to say like, oh, he's going to be out of the league in like 2 to 3 years. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer. But based on what he's done the last 6 seasons, basically since he's got out of Edmonton, Anaheim, unfortunately, eventually got to Edmonton. He's a Hall of Famer now. No doubt, in my opinion. When looking at the way that he was able to change his game, a lot of former stars are not able to adapt the way Corey Perry has. And although, again, he hasn't been a top 7 or 8 player on any of the teams that he went to the Stanley Cup Finals with, he has really adapted his game. From the ages of 35 to 39, he's been a 17-goal, 34-point pace guy, and now sits at 935 career points. That is checks off the box for longevity, roughly, in terms of a forward. You add on the Hart, you add on the 2 gold medals, I believe, at the Olympics. He's a Hall of Famer. It was looking like he was going to fall short just because the consistency of the prime isn't quite there and the longevity was not going to be there. The longevity is now there for a guy like Corey Perry, and he has impacted winning in terms of getting these teams to the Stanley Cup Final. He has played a serious role. It's not like he's a completely irrelevant 4th liner that's just cup chasing. No, he is important to their culture and has been an effective 2-way guy. He's playing on like the top 6 this year for Edmonton. It has been really impressive to watch. So for a guy that 5-6 years ago I thought was not trending, he's now pretty easily, and this is one of his more impressive seasons later on in his career. Definitely with the win, with the Stanley Cup this year, it should not even be remotely up for debate. In my opinion right now, he's a Hall of Famer. I would give it to him. Next up, we got Worston. Sorry, I keep on botching this. I'll probably throw them up afterwards in the edit. RNH was worth the first overall pick and is exactly what the Oilers needed. Now, when looking at this, when looking at relative to other first overall picks, I think that's obviously ludicrous. And even based on his hype, he was expected to be a pretty elite, not franchise level guy. He wasn't that level of prospect, but he came a little bit short relative to that. And to say what the Oilers needed, I would kind of disagree with that to a degree. He's what they need now because they got McDavid in 2015, because they got Draisaitl in 2014. But when you look at the context of 2011, I think that you can say that. You can make that argument, considering the fact that After him was Landeskog, other guys in that draft. Landeskog, Scheifele, JT Miller. Like, that draft does not have... Obviously, Kucherov went 58th overall, but, like, nobody was taking Kucherov first overall then. So, yeah, I get what you're saying to a degree, but I think that is... I don't like that. Like, is Zach Blyde going first overall in 2014 exactly what the Panthers needed in the right pick, worth the first overall when he wasn't the best player in that draft? I think it's a little bit of cherry-picked and rose-tinted glasses to a degree, just because RNH for a first overall pick compared to other guys is not exactly to the level that you expect. But yeah, that's the podcast. That's the first solo podcast in a while. I ended up going for like 50 minutes. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this episode, I guess? Babiak will be back next week. I'll be seeing the next one. My throat is sore. Peace.